Thank you, President Riccobono, for such a thoughtful introduction. I'm going to start this evening off with a trigger warning. This presentation will be discussing sexual misconduct and abuse. Please take care of yourself, step away as needed, and know that you are not alone. The founder of the Me Too movement, Tarana Burke, asserts, "I don't want to miss this moment. It is not always going to be on TV. The media is not always going to care about what I have to say about sexual violence. When that goes away, I need you to still care about this. I need you to recognize this is an epidemic, a pandemic that will not go away by just talking. Speeches and hashtags do not make it go away." So we stand here today, vulnerable, authentic, and honest, recognizing that this speech may not bring assurance and healing. It may bring frustration. It may cause pain because of how much raw feelings we are experiencing right now. It may demonstrate the love and heart and dedication so many are working toward within and outside our organization for the benefit of the blind community. We are here today to be transparent of our work over the past 6 months as NFB's survivor-led task force and the ways in which we recommend our organization to proceed. My name is Catherine Webster, and joining me on this virtual stage is Daphne Mitchell and Briley O'Connor. In the audience is Cheryl Fields, Marcy Carpenter, and Sarah Meyer, the second half of our hearts who have supported each of us during these difficult months. We make up the survivor-led task force, bringing our diverse experiences, backgrounds, and identities to the table, and driving the voice of survivors to center stage, as we all are survivors. I want to start by sharing some of the work we have done, and then I will pass it to Briley and Daphne to present our collective recommendations as the transition from this interim task force to the soon established survivor-led group is underway. I want to set the stage by acknowledging the importance of research that shows people with disabilities are 3 times more likely to experience violent victimization than people without disabilities. And the rates are even higher for women, non-binary and transgender identities, and those with intellectual, psychiatric, or multiple disabilities. This means this conversation is more relevant within our community. I also want to amplify the fact that only 13% of people with disabilities who have been harmed by sexual misconduct and domestic abuse receive victim services, which further justifies the necessity of the Safety Fund. President Riccobono and the National Board will be bringing to this convention floor for a vote. I strongly urge support of this necessary and proactive resolution that will only strengthen the trust and help decrease all of the harm for our survivors. Now to get into our work. On January 1st, with advising our national leadership and president on survivorship efforts with Sky as the limit, we prioritize 3 branches of efforts: communications and engagement, procedures and oversight, and training and culture. While these branches each explored and dove into the many topics, I'm going to share just a few of those top highlights. Communications and engagement is critical to this work because successful and maintenance of that means transparency, and promoting that transparency is core for building trust. This branch ensured safety and support conversations around survivors were brought to over 50 chapter meetings and over 10 state conventions during the spring months, as well as during all chapter presidents' calls, Washington seminar, and nearly all other Open Federation events. We helped build the Code of Conduct Frequently Asked Questions document, created vignettes, which are nuggets of information shared on our resources page at nfb.org/survivors, and those vignettes are from the voice of survivors. This branch also worked on ensuring Spanish translation was a priority, making documents digestible and reader-friendly, pushing announcements and calendars of events out on the presidential releases, leadership meetings, leadership notes, listservs, and the list goes on. as well as developing blog post entries for survivors from survivors and speaking on the Nation's Fly podcast. They maintain the website page for all updates and resources. And of course, we've been maintaining our email account and voicemail box to provide consistent support to survivors. And that is still alive and well for anyone who needs any support throughout this week. This branch was the stick to ensuring the work in progress was spread across our community. Procedures and oversight was fast at work, reviewing policies, working with RAIN, our third-party partner, and the special committee. We helped develop the Obligation for Responsible Leaders document that outlines clear expectations that our leaders must follow in promoting a no-tolerance environment against code of conduct violations. We also helped improve the notification of expulsion and suspension that allows leaders and select members to be proactively notified and alerted of outcomes. We worked to improve the language for reports being ruled to the reporting parties, so then when they receive a substantiation or unsubstantiated claim, that it is as empathetic as possible. We advised on the expansion of the background policies, youth policies, and other organizational procedures. Most prominently, we held 3 open meetings to gather feedback from the blindness community on the code of conduct itself, as well as the procedures, policies, and communications. We also hosted a call with our external investigator, Tanya Banya, to put a strong and honest voice to a name that is working so hard for justice and accountability for our survivors. This branch also worked with RAIN on response protocols for leaders and members, which will soon translate into training center response protocols for code of conduct violations. Last but certainly not least, our training and culture branch focused on immediate and long-term training, as well as various ways to ensure our community promoted a culture of informed consent. This involved developing a positive blindness philosophy embedded in our trainings around trauma-informed communications, consent and boundaries, sexual misconduct prevention, bystander intervention, and other difficult topics. We partnered and learned from the Consent Academy and know that this relationship is long-term, and we're so grateful. We also ensured that BELL coordinators, mentors, and volunteers were trained on consent and boundaries, as well as our youth track participants. We developed a post-level set training plan to broaden the education opportunities for members and leaders, including topics of unconscious bias, inclusive leadership, consent and boundaries, trauma-informed communications, and sexual misconduct prevention. The initial level set training reached nearly 800 serve on national division boards, affiliate boards, the National Board of Directors, 2021 Scholarship Committee, NBPCB board, national staff, the task force, and all training center staff, students, and board members. This is just the beginning of a commitment to continuous and consistent training. We worked with the DEI committee on accountability processes, what that could look like on the individual level and organizationally speaking. A piece of this was developing an evaluation for leaders to take post-training that ensured attendance and digestion of information was maintained. As we look ahead, our branch also developed the concept of the survivor-led group that will be established in the next couple of weeks, created the application, and will conduct interviews to recommend our next co-leads. During National Convention, we ensured training was offered nearly every day starting Tuesday and covered topics of psychological first aid, bystander intervention and allyship, consent and boundaries, and empowerment for survivors. We designated a Zoom room and continue to do so tomorrow for safe space for survivors to speak one-on-one with trauma-informed individuals if they are feeling at all triggered or have any concerns or hesitations around this week. A big piece of this branch work was done behind the scenes, working with individuals and state leadership on creating safe and welcoming cultures. These conversations were often the most difficult and most rewarding. Seeing pained individuals transforming from constant pain to glimpses of healing and hope. and welcomeness. It has been and will continue to be our hope of restoring trust and accountability in our organization for all parts of the blindness community as we represent all blind people. Before we move into our recommendations, I want to voice so much appreciation for our branch volunteers. They spent so many hours with us brainstorming and problem solving, both allies and survivors, members and non-members. Thank you for sharing your perspectives and ideas on a week-to-week basis with us. Thank you to the Consent Academy for partnering with us on trainings. And we know that this is just the beginning of a long, partnership. Thank you to Bobby Pompey and Laura Miller of California for facilitating youth track consent conversations with our little ones yesterday. For those who volunteered during our safe spaces, so many names to name, but thank you from the bottom of our hearts. There are so many other thank yous, but I do want to acknowledge Danielle Montour, George Stern, Ty Tomasi, and Bobby Pompey for your truth, your stories, and your work on this topic. Beyond the incredible panel that we just had with your voices, you each have been instrumental in shaping our vision and direction for the benefit and safety of survivors within this organization. Your perspectives and experiences are invaluable. I often get asked why I am going to continue doing this hard work, particularly as a survivor myself. Shannon Canton, one of the vocal allies within our organization and a dear friend of mine, shared during the panel earlier today that he had a difficult choice to make. As an ally, should he leave this organization to stand with survivors or stay to be a part of the transformational change? When assaulted by a state leader in our movement, I had to make a similar but different choice. Do I leave the organization because a leader doubted my truth and instead told me to wear less clothes and stop being a baby? Or do I educate them on my terms and in my time because a single leader or handful of them are not indicative of an entire organization? I made my choice. That choice isn't for everyone, and no one should feel the pressure of being involved or leaving. That is your choice, your experience, and your feelings. They are all valid. Either way, there is work to be done, and those leaders who diminish the voices of survivors should not and will not be welcomed into our family, let alone in positions of power. These 6 months scratched the surface and accomplished a lot of good, but there is a lifetime ahead of us. We are here to support survivors in all angles, coming from all walks of life. Our 54 recommendations hopefully provide clarity on our perspectives and thoughts as a task force and shed light on the collective ideas of folks across the blindness community. We've broken these recommendations up into 7 categories. Keep in mind, all of these will be posted on nfb.org/survivors in the next few weeks, so you can see the full list. For now, I will hand it over to Briley O'Connor to dive in.
Thanks, Catherine. I'll be walking you through our recommendations regarding the Code of Conduct, data tracking and transparency, and survivor support. I'll spend concentrated time on some over others due to time constraints, but all of these will be available to read in full on our website in the next month. Let's start with the Code of Conduct. These recommendations suggest changes to the current Code of Conduct, as well as ways in which our policies at all levels can be improved. First one is to appoint a Code of Conduct Oversight and Accountability Committee. This committee would be responsible for conducting a formal annual review of the Code of Conduct, recommending changes to policies, processes, and procedures as needed, and will serve as the selection pool for the...
Hey, Briley.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. You're muffled a lot.
Oh, is that...
No,
I think that's your end.
Okay.
Yep. Ruining my flow, Webster. All right. Let me find my spot. Okay. Okay, so the committee, here we go. Okay. Recommending changes to policies, processes, and procedures as needed, and will serve as a selection pool for the 3-member subcommittee that reviews Code of Conduct report appeals. This body will be comprised of representatives chosen annually by different constituencies from across the Federation. The president will not be responsible for choosing members for this committee to ensure that a cross-section of the organization can provide updates and feedback in a way that eliminates even the appearance of favoritism or partiality. The true effectiveness of any code of conduct and associated reporting process is measured by the confidence that those the code is designed to protect have in it. The President and General Counsel will review the names only to ensure that all members of the committee do not have code of conduct violations or ongoing investigations. The committee should include 2 representatives from the survivor-led group, 2 representatives from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, 1 representative from the National Association of Blind Students, 1 representative from the National Organization of Parents of Blind Children, 1 representative from each of the NFB-branded training centers, and this may include board members or staff members, 1 member of the National Board of Directors, 1 affiliate president, the NFB's General Counsel, 1 mental health professional selected by the Human Services Division, 1 member of the LGBTQ group, and 1 representative from the Deaf-Blind Division. The next recommendation is to review and update as needed the FAQs on at least an annual basis. Explore updating the Code of Conduct language to make it clear that negligence or failure to respond appropriately to incidents as a leader has consequences. Hold at least 2 open membership calls facilitated by the survivor-led group prior to the annual Code of Conduct review to solicit feedback for the Code of Conduct Oversight and Accountability Committee. Within a month of updates being made to the code, hold at least 2 open calls to share information with the broader community. Create a web form to collect Code of Conduct feedback that will be shared with the survivor-led group co-leads or their designees. Extend the waiver of 1-year time limits for Code of Conduct reports to January 1st of 2022 to afford survivors more time to file reports. Update Code of Conduct language to allow reporting parties up to 5 years to report a violation. If the reporting party is a minor at the time of the incident, ensure that the 5-year allowance starts once the individual reaches the age of 18. Continue utilizing an external investigator for Code of Conduct reports pertaining to sexual misconduct. Explore how discrimination and other forms of harm outside of sexual misconduct should be investigated and resolved. We want to demonstrate to survivors of all harm that their pain and trauma is no less valid simply because it falls outside of the realm of sexual misconduct. Ensure all national, state, and local leaders and members are familiar with the mandatory reporting requirements within their specific location when working with youth and understand how to carry out their duties in such roles. Develop youth policies that are standardized, require adoption by all affiliates, and ensure members and volunteers working with youth provide their signature prior to youth interaction. Conduct a regular review, at least annually, of all policies that address sexual misconduct broadly and youth programming specifically. Standardize the sexual assault and molestation policies across the organization ensuring state-specific addendums are included if further clarification is needed. The next section are data tracking and transparency recommendations. A significant portion of the feedback we received from survivors and other members was around the broad desire for greater visibility into the scope of the problem of sexual misconduct within the Federation and our NRFB branded training centers. These recommendations serve to help us establish mechanisms to track code of conduct reports in a way that enables us to respond to patterns of behavior proactively. Number 1, develop and implement a process to track how many reports are filed, what categories of misconduct are reported, how many are substantiated versus unsubstantiated, what percentage involves minors, and basic demographic data for both reporting and for both the reporting party and the accused. 2, add an optional basic demographic data form to the Code of Conduct reporting form to gather data, which will help us to understand how different types of harm impact different communities within our organization. Next one is to develop a Code of Conduct feedback form to allow reporting parties and accused parties, once the appeal window has closed, to share feedback with a survivor-led group and a Code of Conduct and Oversight Accountability Committee for continuous evaluation and improvement. Provide an annual report to the membership during National Convention regarding the prior year's data, and then house annual data reports on the safety and support page of our website. Survey members on our organizational climate at least every 3 years to assess progress, sharing aggregate findings with our members. Then the last section for me is around survivor support. One of the most effective ways to help survivors heal is to provide supports that are trauma-informed, reliable, and easy to access. By investing in empowering survivors, we can help them to reclaim their voice, their agency, and their power. These recommendations will require the commitment of our National Board of Directors, yes, but also all members who are willing to give their time and expertise to these efforts. First one is to develop a survivor liaison and advocate program. This body will have one representative from each affiliate to serve as an information liaison between the national organization and their affiliate. 20 of these 52 members will be specifically trained on being an advocate throughout the Code of Conduct process. Liaisons and advocates will be responsible for clarifying what types of harm can be reported, educating leadership on their responsibilities regarding reporting, understanding standards around mandatory reporting on the state and local levels, and ensuring that the understanding of our organizational policies is consistent. The liaison/advocate will be chosen at the affiliate level, receive training and updates regarding the Code of Conduct changes and policy updates, communicate changes to all affiliate members via affiliate board meeting presentations, and answer questions from members, bring concerns to the Code of Conduct Oversight and Accountability Committee, and provide information to survivors regarding their reporting options. The advocates will also receive additional training, and we will ensure that they'll be trauma-informed. The next one is encourage affiliates, national divisions, groups, and committees to publish a list of referrals and resources, including hotlines and support chats for crises and support mechanisms in advance of large events, both in person and virtual. Develop an informal process for survivor-led group co-leads to express financial need for attendance to Federation events if the financial need exists, to ensure their ability to actively participate. Last but not least, ensure the affiliate presidents where the accused has membership status and or residence is notified of the category of misconduct once a code of conduct violation is filed against an accused person, keeping the name of the survivor or victim anonymous. If there is not a consistently applied standard and process for notification of leaders, leaders are not able to make informed decisions regarding participation in affiliate conventions, appointments to committees, and other leadership opportunities. I'm going to pass the baton to Daphne Mitchell, who will cover the last 4 sections of our recommendations.
Thank you, Briley. I will be covering the topics of communication, training centers, acts of harm that involve matters related to DE&I, and then also ongoing training. Streamlining communications with survivors, all federationists, and third-party organizations will increase understanding and awareness of safety and support efforts within the Federation. To increase accountability and transparency, members may request the organizational membership status of an accused person following the conclusion and appeal window of an investigation. Third-party organizations planning to invite Federationists to present at their events should have the ability to verify whether the individual has substantiated code of conduct violations. A policy to ensure that a National Center staff member has authorization to share information should be developed, and publish the contact details of that individual on the Safety and Support webpage. Protection of survivor identities is of the utmost importance. Upon request, information issued will only include membership status, broad category of misconduct, and if a minor was harmed. The following communication strategies should be considered to share information. Establishment of a dedicated listserv for the survivor-led group. Feature periodic blogs and podcasts on the Nation's Blind platform. Update the Safety and Support webpage on a bi-monthly basis. Establish a social media presence for the survivor-led group to promote transparency. Write safety and support documents in plain, non-lingual language. Translations of safety and support materials should be made available at the initial launch of each project or announcement. Continue dissemination of monthly e-blasts to General Federation listservs. Socialize the obligations for Responsible Leaders Protocol routinely on the presidential release and or President's Notebook to amplify notification of this duty. And create a safety and support channel on NFB Newsline to assure members without email or other digital communication tools are notified of safety and support efforts. We recognize that there is ongoing work with our affiliated training centers to update policies, practices, and procedures to mitigate harm. We recommend that students and staff be required to complete routine trainings on consent and boundaries, sexual misconduct prevention, unconscious bias, and or inclusive leadership. This information should be tracked by training centers, and third-party experts should suggest specifics on timing and frequency. Policy updates should be communicated to students and staff continuously. This may be achieved by incorporating policies, ethical decision-making, and other code of conduct topics into student handbooks, the orientation process, seminars, and other outlets for information sharing. Each center should adopt an ethical decision-making model, including consultation within difficult situations, and transparently capture the process on each center's website. Executive directors should provide a detailed report of misconduct and how each incident was addressed within 2 weeks of resolution to their boards of directors, and include a quarterly aggregated report during board meetings. The Survivor-led task force consulted with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the following recommendations that affect intersectional identities. Ideally, by January of 2022, the Federation should secure an external partner or designated staff member who possesses expertise in assessing and addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in large membership organizations. This person will work with national leadership and the DEI committee to provide recommendations regarding training, code of conduct, language and protocols, and other relevant policies. Regular updates will be provided to membership on this work with the same frequency and urgency that was given to the work of the Survivor-led task force. Staff should proactively resolve gaps in providing effective accommodations to people with multiple disabilities and learning styles for upcoming trainings, events, document distribution, announcements, etc., in collaboration with the DEI committee. The availability of these access tools should be widely publicized. And we should research organizational accountability processes more thoroughly to broaden awareness throughout the community, including members, leaders, and non-members. The following recommendations will support meaningful training to further transform our organization. Hire an employee or independent contractor to support training development, delivery, facilitation, and evaluation across the entire organization. Responsibilities would include planning and coordinating all trainings surrounding code of conduct, DEI, sexual misconduct, etc. The previously delivered level-setting foundational training delivered by RAIN should be extended to chapter boards, affiliate scholarship committees, state division boards, those working with youth, and membership chairs/committees, and RAIN should facilitate these trainings to the groups mentioned. Given the varying frequency of organization elections, trainings should be offered, trainings related to sexual misconduct prevention, consent and boundaries, unconscious bias, and inclusive leadership should be offered every year. Participation in training should be tracked, and national and state divisions, boards, committees, chapters, and volunteers should be reported to, I'm gonna go back. Should be tracked, and elections of national, state, and division boards, committees, chapters, and volunteers should be reported to the National Center within 2 months of appointment or election. Leaders should be required to complete trainings every other year and ensure that they clearly understand the obligation for responsible leaders protocol during these trainings. We should also review knowledge assessment results from RAIN trainings, as well as upcoming trainings to ensure continual evaluation and improvement. The Survivor-led task force has received valuable feedback on the importance of external parties and relevant staff being aware of our blindness philosophy and organizational policies. This knowledge enables the trainers to include relevant examples in trainings, thus making the sessions more applicable. Our members are vested in becoming better allies to survivors and understanding how to engage in bystanding interventions. We should also ensure that trainings are offered to all members throughout the year at no cost. Trainings may be offered at National Convention each year in person or every 6 months via virtual platforms. We thank every survivor who trusted us with your story, all branch participants, and every member and non-member who filled out a survey or participated in a feedback call. The National Center's communication and education teams have been invaluable partners as we implement greater accountability and transparency surrounding supports for survivors. We have learned and grown as individuals, as a task force, and as an organization because of survivor vulnerability. We are grateful for your commitment and guidance as we work towards survivor-oriented solutions. This work is uncomfortable, and our organization is at a defining moment. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for sharing, growing, feeling, and learning alongside us. The long-term survivor-led group is in its infancy, and we are seeking applicants to apply for the co-lead positions. Browse to www.nfb.org/survivors to complete the application. Application forms are housed outside of the NFB website, and it closes on Monday, July 12th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. President Riccobono and the National Board charged the Survivor-led task force with amplifying the voices of survivors, to build upon our organization's code of conduct and chart a new course where instances of sexual misconduct are handled through trauma-informed approaches. Develop a tool to notify responsible leaders of the danger of failing to respond when reports of sexual misconduct are received. Survivors and allies have given their unwavering support to these initiatives. Your support, along with leadership buy-in for true accountability, ownership, and transparency, illustrates that we, the organized blind, are definitely stronger together.